Hey friends, it's Laura with Laura's Handmade Haven. Welcome or welcome back. I'm so glad you joined me today. We're continuing our Sweet Land Sew Along video series. This video, I'm going to focus on cutting and organizing our fabrics. In the first video, we worked through a lot of prep work. We went through the sew along guide. We broke down what we were going to need to do. I gave you that really handy organization packet to label all of your pieces and help you get organized. And we talked about the Sew Simple shapes. We got those organized. We got all of our shapes traced and all of those Pellon pieces sorted into the various bags that we're going to be needing for this upcoming quilt. So today we're going to start cutting fabric. Now, before I started this video, the first thing I did was I changed the rotary blade in my rotary cutter because we need sharp cuts, right? So just take a minute right now, pause the video, go change your rotary blade, and I'll meet you at the craft table. All right, so the other thing I did before I started the video today was I went through the sew along guide and I went through all of my fabrics and I put my fabrics in sew along guide order. So when you look in your sew along guide, you have, I think there's like 7 pages of cutting for this quilt. I know, it's a lot. It's always a lot. It's because there's so many fabric and so many pieces, but I put all the fabrics in order and I put those back in the box that I got a kit from Fat Quarter Shop. Now I will tell you most of the fabrics were in order already, and that's so helpful. It's one of the reasons I love buying kits from Fat Quarter Shop because they do really think about us as the quilter, and most of those fabrics were already pretty close to an order. They were in 2 different bundles. I did have to go back and forth between the bundles a few times, but I know it's because that Kimberly is a quilter just like us. And some of these fabrics, it looked like they must have been pretty close on cutting because we got a little more than a quarter of a yard, or a fat quarter, like the sew along guide call for. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with our first fabric. Now I am not going to cut all of these fabrics, all right, in this video. I'm not going to do it. I just want to give you a few fabrics so you can see how my organization labels come into play and how I organize my stuff. So I'm actually going to move you around to the other side so you can kind of see how I have my space set up, because you don't need any of these measurements because it's all free in the sew along guide. You can get that from the Raleigh Blake website and you can cut all of your fabrics with that too. But you may want to see how I'm organizing and sorting as I go along through each fabric. So let me swing you around to the other side and get you a better view of that. All right, the only thing you can't see in this shot is that I have my sew along guide sitting over here to the side on my table. My cutting mat and my fabric, my first fabric, is on my cutting mat. And then my project box has my applique blocks, my piece blocks, my sashing and cornerstone bags. The sashing and cornerstones will be going in those bags, as I just said. The piece blocks will go in their bags. The applique blocks will go in their bags. And then off to the side here, which you can't really see, but I promise you it's here. In the other project tote, I have those design boards that fit and my labels for all those border pieces. So we have 136 border pieces, and those will be sorted through the different design boards in this box. And then right here in front of you, I have just a design board that has my sashing labels, my cornerstone labels, and my A through M labels that are for those pieced blocks. And they're just kind of hanging out there. And in fact, I'm going to put that on a smaller design board. It doesn't need to be that big. This is what I love. If you have not checked out my video on how to make your own design boards, make sure you do that, because look at that. I don't have to worry about that falling off the table. The other one, it probably would have tipped. All right. So, and then I have my rotary cutter, and I have an 18 by 3 inch ruler. Off to the side here, I have all of my other rulers, so you may see me switching rulers out as we go along. So I'm just going to cut my first fabric, and then I'm going to tell you how we're going to sort it, and then we're going to go through a few more fabrics until you get the idea on how to just kind of keep organized as you're cutting along. Now I folded this fabric because the thing that we're going to cut is 2.5 inch squares, and that is, it looks like they're for the pieced blocks and the pieced border. So I just like to try to cut as many layers as I can at once, and that way I don't have to continually cut things. I'm just lining that up on my cutting mat so I can get a sharp cut on both ends. And when I folded this, it did fold into 5 inches. So that's going to work perfectly for my 2.5 inch squares. Thank you to the viewer that gave me the tip on how to get this closed quickly and easily. Just bounce it on the table and it's happy. All right, so 4 of these go into piece block 3 and 4 of them go into a pieced border. So I do need one of my labels. It will tell you in the sew along guide. It's a little tricky until you figure out what their idea is there for us. They're saying it's a pieced block 3. So the other thing I grabbed was just a little thing of pins. So this is A for pieced block 3. So I'm just going to go to pieced block 3 and I'm going to throw these in. And then the other 4 are for a pieced border. All right, and that's all we need with this fabric. So I'm just going to set it off to the side and grab the next fabric. Now this one, you can see it in the sew along guide. I'm going to get my pieces cut and then show you how I will sort those. Now remember, these are not fabric scissors, these are paper scissors, so they just get to hang out on the side. Okay, the other thing that I like to do, and that's coming into play with this one, is that I like to look through the entire list and decide if there are any that I should be cutting first. Because the first thing it tells you to cut with this is a 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangle. And that's great, except that if I cut those first and I just go boom, 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 then when I have to cut my next cut, which is a 1.5 by 16.5 inch rectangle, I may not have enough fabric left. So I like to cut my longer pieces first. That way I don't have to worry about not having enough fabric for those smaller pieces. So again, I'm just going to cut those 3 longer pieces first, and then we will cut the smaller pieces. And I would just encourage you to do that. Just look at the cutting guide and decide which will be the right, just make sure that you're not going to cut into your fabric and then not have enough to cut all the pieces. I like cutting those longer pieces first, just to make sure I'm optimizing my fabric. It's always nice to cut with a fresh rotary blade too. Makes me so happy. Now, I would say the other thing, if you have a ruler that's long enough, when you're cutting the 1.5 inch strips, I don't cut from like just one end. I line it up on the edge, and then I line up a straight line on my ruler on both the top and the bottom of those. And that way I feel like I just get a better, more accurate cut. All right, and these are for 3 different sashings. So they are for 5, 9, and 17. So I'm just digging through my little pile here and finding those 3 numbers. Now, if you don't want to print these out, I get it. And you could totally just have a piece of paper next to you and just write down on the piece of paper what it is and use that to clip it on. Now, I know the sashing has 3 pieces, so I'm just going to fold these in half and put a pin through it. And I'm going to put them on a design board here off to my right-hand side as well. And then when I get 3 pieces for any of the sashings, then I'll put them in the bag, but not until. This is just what I found works really good for me for when I am pre-cutting an entire quilt out. Obviously, you need to do you and decide what works best for you. So like I said, I'm just going to put these 3 pieces on a design board, kind of set those off to the side, and they'll just be hanging out there, but they're pinned. I don't just lay a piece of paper on anything just in case the cat runs in and knocks it over, or in case my husband comes in and knocks it over. Things like that have happened in my past, and I just don't want to deal with that anymore. It makes me very angry. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. So I cut those long pieces first, and that was very wise because this is not quite 9 inches. So I can't get 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles out of this piece. So I can go the other way, or I may be able to go, I may be able to go this way as well, but I would not be able to get all of those pieces out of that fabric if I hadn't kind of planned ahead a little bit. And I need 4 of these. So 4.5, 13.5. 4.5 and 4.5 is 9, and 4.5 is 13.5. So I can cut like this. And again, I'm going to use one of the slots on my ruler. And then this is my piece of fabric that I'll put to the side. And then this is what I will cut down. And these are all B, piece for block 2. And that's the pieced block 2. All right, and so all these B's are going to go into pieced block 2 bag. And the stashing's off to the side. So now we can turn the page and grab the next fabric. All right, so on this fabric, when I look at it, it is cut a little wonky. So I'm going to straighten it up with my ruler. When I lay my ruler on there, I'm going to make sure that I have it straight when I cut, because this is going to go into the sashing. And if my sashing is wonky, it's going to bug me. So that's another thing that just kind of keep that in mind. If you have patterned fabric that you don't, especially if you know it's going to be going into a sashing where it's straight, you may want to take a little bit of time and make sure that you straighten up the lines and lay your ruler straight with the lines of the print. Sometimes the fabric is off, sometimes it's cut off. It just depends. Full disclosure, I did cut 2 of my fabrics backwards just now. So, but that's all right. It's okay. All right, so we need sashing 13 and 24. Now, when I'm putting my sashing pieces on the design board, I am putting them in numerical order just because that way it makes it easier for me to find. I can just glance over there and see if I've had that number or not. And if I haven't, then I can, then I know it's in the stack. Or if it's in numerical order, it's a lot quicker and easier to find. So like that one was 13, so it goes between the 9 and the 17 for right now. All right, so the next fabric, we have some of the applique block pieces. And the applique block pieces, just so you know, if it's a So Simple shape, it doesn't need to be cut precisely. That size is just because that's how big of a piece of fabric you need to make sure you have enough to cover your So Simple shape, to get that shape sewn and turned well. So the first thing I'm going to do on this fabric is cut the sashing strips, and then we will cut the applique block pieces. So again, I'm just going to make sure that it is semi-straight. I need 4 of these. So 4 times 1.5 is 6. So I just grabbed my 6 by 24 inch ruler so I can cut a big chunk out of this fabric basically. And then I will subcut the 6 inches into 1.5. But then this can move at the side. My husband laughs because when I'm cutting out pieces for a quilt, my space gets a little crazy. I typically end up with rulers and design boards and all kinds of stuff sitting everywhere. But a lot of times I will cut in 2 or 3 stints because it's a lot of cutting for one time. So a lot of times I will cut in more than one block of time. All right, so this is for 5, 11, 18, and 20. And like I said, I check my design board first to see if any of those numbers are on there. And if not, then I go to the pile and start pulling out the numbers. And this may seem like it takes a while to do this, and I don't know. I mean, I've tried cutting these quilts different ways, and every single way I've tried cutting them, it just takes some time. But this has just given me the peace of mind to know that everything is organized, and I know where everything is, and it's easy to find and easy to grab when I go to sew. All right, so the other things that we need two 2.5 by 3.5 inch squares and rectangles, and those are for U4 for applique block 1. So basically, I'm going to look at this and go, okay, well, this is 5.5 inches wide, and my ruler's 3, and you can like line it up on your mat. I don't know if you can see that. Here, let's move this down. All right, so it needs to be 2.5 by 3.5, and it's 5 inches this way plus a little bit. So if I line this up right about here, I can cut that off, and that's my 3.5 by 2.5. Now this piece is a little bigger, but it doesn't matter because this is for a So Simple shape. So those don't need to be precise. If it has a letter, if it says U4 or U whatever, then you know that's a So Simple shape. Also, if it says applique block, well, the piece blocks have the stars in the middle, and the cornerstones do too. But the applique blocks, it will say applique block, and it says U4 or U12 or U whatever, then you know it's a So Simple shape. It does not need to be super precise. Now this goes into applique block 1. Now I don't match them up with my interfacing at this point. I'll do that when I pull them out to make the block itself. I just put them in the bag right now because I know that's going to be going into applique block 1. All right, I'm going to continue cutting some fabric. When I get to some pieced border, some pieced border pieces, then I will add that in. Okay guys, so I've been cutting, and I just want to show you where I'm at. I'm actually about halfway through page 7 at this point, so I've gotten 2 pages done, and I've had some realizations. First of all, I have a design board with all of my sashing strips that I've cut so far laid out. A couple more sashing pieces that I don't have cut yet, but this is what my design board looks like, and all of them will just stay there until I get all of the cutting done. And then I'm not sure if I'm going to leave them on the design board or if I'm going to put them into the bag. I may revise my plan on that. Sometimes it happens. So anyway, this is what my sashing cutout looks like. And then I have my bags here in my project keeper. And they've all been sorted depending on what they are. If it's applique blocks, the pieces are just slid inside. If they're pieced blocks, then I did label them with our alpha letters and pin that on and put those in the appropriate bags just to kind of show you how I'm handling that list of letters. You can kind of see this one. I'm cutting out the letters as I come upon them, right? So, but I'm keeping like this little strip on the side. I cut my strip so I'd have a little place over there that these can still kind of stay together. So I don't have little loose letters everywhere floating around. That's kind of how I'm handling that. I have my sashing that's 6 and 8. I haven't cut anything for those, so they're still on the design board. And then my cornerstones that have not been cut are still stacked here. Cornerstones, I just have 1 fabric for those cut so far. And so they're also on their own design board and pinned with the label for what number they are. And again, when I get all of those cut, I probably will just pick all of those up and stick those in a bag. So when I get to Cornerstone Week, they will all be together in one bag. I have ran across a couple modifications, and I will be updating the document and the link to that document. So if you've already downloaded it, but if you haven't printed it, or if you just want the updated version, then make sure you go grab it on the description box in this video, because when I got to the golds, I realized we're doing a scrappy binding on this quilt, and she's telling you to cut out 2.5 by 11 and 5/8 inch strips. I'm just going to tell you that I'm just cutting them 2.5 inches wide of whatever's left out of the fabric at this point. So this one I think is like 13 inches and this one's a little over 12. But before I start doing my binding, I'll cut them down to 11/5/8. I'm just not worried about cutting them down to that exact measurement quite yet. And then the other thing, which is kind of a big deal in my mind, but we'll see how it plays out. For right now, I'm just following the cutting guide. On that pieced border, they don't tell you which border piece you're cutting for. They just tell you cut for border piece A, cut for border piece B, or however many. There's just A and B for the border pieces. And so, yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm just stacking them. All my A's are up here and they're the 2.5-inch squares. All my B's are down here and they're 2.5 by 4.5. And that's to make all those flying geese. Now, in theory, when I get all the way through all this cutting, I should have tons of pieces of A's and B's, and I should be able to match them up to make the different flying geese. Looking through the sew along guide, it looks like we're just kind of matching those as we go. So if you want your quilt to look exactly like her quilt, we're going to have a lot of matching to do, and I do plan on doing that. Yeah, so that's going to be a lot of work down the road, but it's okay. We will tackle it one flying goose at a time. So like I said, I am halfway through page 7 cutting. I just wanted to give you an update on where I was at with my cutting, and I'm going to continue cutting, and I doubt that I get all of it done today. I'm just going to kind of cut until I'm tired, and then I will pick up again another day. But I will do a wrap up for this video, and I'll tell you how far I got before quitting on day 1 and give you a time estimate just so you can kind of understand how much time you'll be spending on cutting as well. So to wrap up this video, I'm just going to first tell you that I am not done cutting. I got through around 3.5 pages. I've been cutting for about 2 hours, and now that is with some recording time too. So you got to kind of keep that in mind because I was starting and stopping and doing some other things with that. But I would say 2 hours for 2.5 pages, so about an hour a page, and I feel like I cut fairly fast. It just depends. But I do have most of the sashing cut. I'm working my way through the sew along guide, so obviously not all of it's cut because I haven't got to all the fabrics yet. I do have several of the cornerstones, the backgrounds for those. Got to be careful to pick that up, but I have several of the cornerstone backgrounds cut as well. I have some binding pieces cut. And I have lots of fabric in my bags for the applique blocks and pieced blocks. So I have made pretty good progress, and like I said, I'm probably about 1/3 of the way through. I think there's another 4.5 pages, 4.25 pages really to go. So I'm about 1/3 of the way through, and I feel like I accomplished a good chunk for today. I may go ahead and cut some more after I wrap this up with you guys, but I may give my legs some rest too. We'll see how it goes. If you are doing this quilt, make sure you check out the description box down below. I have updated my organization packet for you guys. I noticed that I feel like I missed one of the sashing numbers, and I need to revise the border blocks a little bit so that you have labels for those things. And yeah, I think that's all that I need to update on that. But if you're doing this sew along, I am so excited. I hope that you keep me updated. I am on Instagram and TikTok, so feel free to tag me or post your things and use some hashtags. I know that I'll be watching for those. Until next time, find joy in all you do. Carve out some time for crafting and creating, and remember, it's always better when you make stuff up.